question. Why should our listeners care? Why should Christians care? And as we've said before, when Rome sneezes, the world catches a cold. And as you alluded to, I don't think that can be understated here. The weakening of Rome is going to have devastating consequences for the whole of Western culture because, like it or not, the Roman Catholic Church was really, and even is now, a central pillar of Western culture and its existence. And especially during the Middle Ages, for example, was really the institution that kept and held society together and promulgated it forward.
Not that Protestants won't ever admit that.
No.
Right. That's exactly right. From Gregory the Great on, Leo the Great is something, but Gregory the Great, 604, the collapse of the Roman Empire in the West. It was the church that kept alive everything. Everything. And in fact, it was out of the papal granaries that they fed the poor, and out of the treasury, and it kept alive everything. Law, to some extent, law and order, learning, everything. Without the church, nothing would have survived in Western civilization. Because of the collapse of Western Protestantism as being a moral impetus in any of their national origins, we'll use Anglicanism as an example. Now, there was a time where marriage, divorce, there was no such thing as divorce in the Church of England until just a few decades ago. It was impossible to get divorced in the Church of England. We've gone from that to having transgendered priests, to having same-sex marriage, to all of this stuff, just like the tsunami of stuff in the last 25 years, right? So there was a time when the Archbishop of Canterbury's moral voice carried more weight than any other Protestant voice in the world. That voice carries no weight whatsoever because it's not based on anything. It doesn't believe anything. There's nothing to back it up. There's no gold in Knox to back up the moral voice. And so really since John Paul II, roughly, the papacy has been the last bastion of the most ancient institution on earth that has moral clout in the world. And when it disappears, there's nothing to replace it. I use American microcosm. Use Billy Graham as an example, right? For decade after decade, Billy Graham would be, if not the most admired American in a poll, would be right up there in the top 2 or 3. Graham's been dead now 7 or 8 years or something like that. And since he's died, the denomination he belonged to is splitting right in half on the same-sex union issue. Southern Baptist Convention, right? And so there's just this is an example. Now, as influential as Graham was, as maybe one of the greatest preachers of all time, certainly maybe the most listened to preacher of all time, his influence is minuscule compared to the papacy.
Right. And the reality is, for non-Catholics and non-Christians, most people around the world look to the papacy or to the Catholic Church or their image of it as their understanding of what Christianity is writ large. And so when you see these mixed signals coming out, most people are just going to attribute that to say, okay, well, that must be what Christians believe about this issue.
Right. And people, even with all the divisions in Christianity, the Catholic Church is by far the largest Christian organization. There's almost 2 billion and a half Catholics. And the next largest group, if you lumped all of Eastern Orthodoxy together, you might get 250 million, somewhere in that range. So it's, and not only it's everywhere in the world. There's nowhere you can go in the world where there's not Roman Catholicism. That's not the case with Presbyterianism or Southern Baptists. In fact, the second most spread Christian faith around the world is Anglicanism,
right?
Because it went with the British Empire. In fact, Eastern Orthodoxy is primarily limited to what is the remains of the old communist empire. So, you can't emphasize how enough that not only is with this sneeze is the world going to get a cold, it's going to get it's going to get a deadly virus.